Welcome. This is the Leaders Commute podcast, and I'm Jess Viegas. The Leaders Commute podcast reflects on the dynamic of recalling past experiences that persistently return to us over the commute of our lives and prompt us to acknowledge their influence on how we might think about business and leadership today. Today's episode, The 7-Year Glitch, presents a rationale for business leaders to evaluate outcomes over longer time horizons to provide better context for important decision-making. Today, my guest is Rick Albertini. He is the CEO of Phoenix Enterprises, Southern California's largest and most complete truck body and van equipment manufacturer and distributor. Rick also happens to be a great friend and one of the Liberty Boys, a basketball cohort I have often referred to in past podcasts. Rick will listen in and then join me to discuss some of the implications of the message I hope to deliver well today. Welcome, Rick. Thank you for listening, and perhaps you are doing so on your actual commute. The night was emblematic of many of the nights that Leslie and I had experienced once we made the decision in 2017 to have Leslie's mother, my mother-in-law, Geraldine, live her remaining days in hospice in our northeast suburban Atlanta home. It was a night of too much unease and wakefulness, made worse by her having to manage the challenges of dementia. Hospice, from my point of view, could most be characterized by an endless string of frequent and intense strategizing, planning, and rationalizing every decision toward the facilitation of a rare good day and a comfortable and dignified end of life. But the anxiety constituent of a 95-year-old brain, teeming with the progression of dementia, turns eating and bathroom habits and days and nights upside down. President Eisenhower once said, "Plans are useless, but planning is essential." Intellectually, I appreciated the bigger lesson of resilience and adaptiveness while continually working on a plan to drive focus and energy. But this night, especially, was a plans are useless one, and a constant stress hung between Geraldine's extreme anxiousness and my guilt for considering how and when this whole situation would be over. Between bouts of nodding off and other manifestations of sleep deprivation, Leslie and I proceeded to a post-mortem of that night's events. There was a standard checklist of questions. Did she sleep too much during the day? Was her meal, constructed for digestion as much as for taste, just a little too spicy? Last evening, did we draw the shades soon enough to mitigate the effects of sundowning, a phenomenon in dementia patients where confusion, agitation, anxiety, and behavioral changes worsen in the late afternoon and evening? The still too early and cold fall morning postponed the analysis until a more civilized time. Too tired to return to our bedroom, we established makeshift accommodations to stay close to Geraldine and then drifted to sleep. A reasonable portion of the space windfall we enjoyed upon relocating from California to Georgia 25 years earlier took the form of an 800-square-foot unfinished basement and a perennially soon-to-be extra bedroom, game room, workout room, TV room, kids' fun room, and sewing room. But as each season passed, the fluctuating purpose for the room could never line up with our timing and financing realities. So, there it sat, accumulating objects of varying degrees of importance, all of waning functionality or value as each year passed. Finally, in the spring of 2017, we made the decision to clear everything out and finish the basement in order for 88-year-old Geraldine to come and live with us. By Christmas of that year, she was settled and acclimated in her new home. The year before, in 2016, after taking a cruise in the South Mediterranean that included time in some of the most beautiful places in Italy and Spain, Leslie and I vowed to make this a more common experience. Talk of France soon turned into planning and deposits for some future excursion that would have to be woven in between my still active and travel-laden professional life. But over subsequent months, the trip had to be canceled a couple of times as Geraldine's condition began to decline. The opportunity to take the trip never came, and major planning efforts reverted from European cruises to managing the logistics of selling Geraldine's home and relocating her into ours. The approaching 7-year anniversary of this move, as with all of the prior anniversaries, were more calibrations than celebrations, marked by the design of coping strategies and searches for small moments of bliss. This day's moment of bliss born reluctantly from the chaos of the night which had now moved into morning, became apparent as I sleepily resettled into a leather chair that was not as comfortable as it should have been. Leslie was breathing softly, her petite frame nestled in a love chair under some weighted blankets. The blue and gold flicker of the fireplace interplayed with the faint morning sunrise peering through the mostly drawn shades. The white noise of the furnace almost drowned out the early morning chirpings of the Carolina wrens bouncing around the backyard. Knowing the moment was fleeting, I wrested whatever rejuvenation I could and longed for when we might replicate more of these moments. I had assured Leslie that I was ready for Geraldine to move in with us, but at times my behavior belied my intent. Often, Leslie had to remind me that, however I chose to handle the circumstances, she had to be first and foremost a caregiver, with no options but to exercise compassion. Caregiver. The power in this word was always a jolt, a reminder that my relationship with Geraldine was secondary and not one that should add to Leslie's stress. Her independent and strong-willed nature exacerbated the mother-in-law, son-in-law dynamics already at play. But ultimately, my love and affection for Leslie made it a foregone conclusion that I would never be an obstacle when the time came to make this move. Also, my mother Rachel, who had passed away several years earlier, nailed the door shut to any other ideas I may have had on the subject. Once, upon asking me how things were going with Geraldine, and then hearing my tepid response of, Jerry's Jerry, she remarked sternly, "Listen, mijo, if you love Leslie, you love her mother, and you should do for her what you would do for me." And that was that. The first couple of years went fairly well. A benefit I had not anticipated was the assuaging of my guilt for leaving Leslie for extended periods of time to work on consulting projects. Geraldine filled the roles of yard work partner, meals companion, and errands collaborator, roles that had been vacated by all my travels. But inevitably, Geraldine's decline imposed more demand on Leslie, and it became necessary for me to travel less and be more helpful around the house. I started doing more of the easier-to-manage house cleaning chores. I handled all of the grocery shopping, becoming more efficient with each trip. I took responsibility for all of the household administrative duties and small projects that to this point we had shared. But I believe Leslie most appreciated my taking responsibility for making all of our meals. Meal planning and preparation had become their own grind with trying to manage food preferences and appropriateness for each of our respective nutritional needs. Leslie would place hers and Geraldine's meal orders and hope that I could cook something edible. Over the years, I had communicated to Leslie that, if I had the time, I believed I could become a reasonably good cook. My trips to the grocery store became my respite from the daily caregiving grind, and I started looking for ways to make healthier and more interesting meals. Leslie's encouragement of my efforts emboldened even more creativity, and soon I found that the cooking part of the day was the most enjoyable for me. The arrival of COVID-19 in spring of 2020 coincided with the effective end of my work travel. The timing was fortuitous as I had just closed a consulting project for the sale of a business, which resulted in fewer work demands and more time to support Leslie. But she anticipated what I had not yet considered or was reluctant to acknowledge: that in spite of my good intentions to be helpful, the abrupt stop to a major portion of my work life would be difficult for me to navigate. Leslie had too often been the recipient of the grumpiness that would ensue when I felt deprived of my diversions, so she was supportive of the various activities in which I engaged to help me keep some sanity. For example, I was able to keep an exercise regimen, transitioning from hikes and trail runs to long walks at a local park. Over many years, I considered how I might translate my consulting work and experience into a book that could help small businesses. The rise of the podcast medium provided an alternative vehicle for this work, and I was able to develop a very satisfying format for distribution of my material. I purchased my first guitar ever and began taking guitar lessons, a luxury I could never rationalize over the years. I started catching up on an inventory of books that I had set aside for later, and I continued to expand my cooking skills by trying new recipes and ingredients and exploring other methods of cooking. One of the casualties of our circumstance was my love of browsing bookstores, having coffee and sharing a dessert with Leslie, talking about family and the things that we wanted to do when we finally had the time. Over the entirety of our long marriage, whether it was coffee and desserts, or gathered around fire pits at the beach, or quiet dinners at seaside restaurants, or drinks at a sports bar, it was enormously calming for me to have this time with her. It allowed me to apologize for this or accept congratulations for that, or to worry about this or plan for that, or to check off this or update on that. A recent version of this found me and Leslie relaxing in Geraldine's space and, as usual, recapping the events of the prior day. We were enjoying coffee and whatever I might have concocted for breakfast. The absence of acute issues from the night before freed the conversation to flow easily. We even had time to talk about other subjects entirely. Leslie asked me how guitar lessons were going, and then challenged my assertion that I had never owned a guitar because she remembered me strumming some tunes back when we were just out of high school. She admitted that she did not know much about the podcast that I was producing and frankly did not see it coming once I started developing it. I explained this was the alternative to the book ideas I had casually mentioned over the years. She asked how my buddy Rick was coping not having me around for hiking and backpacking trips. I said he was managing, and I thanked her for letting me get my long daily walks in and that I was now averaging almost 30 miles a week. We considered what new recipe I might try for dinner that evening, and she complimented me on how good all the meals tasted. We talked about many more things, but as we spoke, I came to realize that this day and the several weeks leading up to it seemed so much more manageable than they had ever been on this journey. There were several reasons that I might have cited for this, but as I tried to consider it more deeply, something surprising began to surface. When Geraldine was first admitted to hospice in early 2024, I immediately moved into a hopeful mood, not for Geraldine's passing, but for the anticipated relief Leslie and I desperately needed. The prognosis for less than a year seemed manageable against the 6 years that had already passed. Leslie had taken extraordinary measures to ensure her comfort, and I presumed this would translate into a peaceful drift towards the end. But Geraldine's considerable strength and resilience, skills honed her entire life to deal with more than her share of challenges and hardships, would accompany her even in this season. Her daily fight against the inevitable became a fight against us as well, and the struggle made each passing day interminably long. It also provoked a form of paralysis that for me consistently institutionalized the least positive view of the circumstances. I knew this was a problem because it disrespected the wonderful new relationship that I had developed with her, the joy I experienced in seeing her and Leslie share tender moments, and the opportunity to create some tender moments of my own. The paralysis did not abate until I, and perhaps Leslie as well, realized that we had slowly and almost imperceptibly just stopped waiting. This simple shift in thinking did not come easily. It was forged from the small successes and big failures and constant strategizing and seemingly endless days and nights into feedback that was calling for a different motive and a way of being. A lyric by the singer-songwriter Sean Rowe states, "Wisdom is lost in the trees somewhere. You're not going to find it in some mental grain hair. It's locked up from those that hurry ahead." It was time to stop hurrying ahead to a time when I thought, somehow, my life would be easier and better, and to appreciate what was in front of me. Geraldine's final days presented rare moments of lucidity. Never quite sure if she recognized who I was, I always approached her with the politeness of a Boy Scout who was trying to help an elderly person cross the street. I asked, "How are you doing today, Jerry?" She at least saw me as someone safe because she gave me a nice smile and said, "Oh, hi." Well, I am just flabbergasted. Leslie and I gave each other a "where the hell did that come from" smile, and then she continued, "And I would like to know what your part is in all of this." As I assessed what the meaning was to this question so I could give the appropriate response, I recalled the contention by Viktor Frankl, the Austrian neurologist, psychiatrist, and Holocaust survivor, who stated that meaning is not something we find in a general sense, but something we create through our actions and responses to the unique challenges life presents to us. Though I aspired to this state, Leslie had selflessly embodied every facet of this dynamic. But Geraldine had posed the question to me, and the best I could produce was, "Well, Jerry, I am just here to help." She just smiled again, sweetly and quietly. Geraldine was not a complainer. She was tough, she was stubborn, and she had more physical strength than any 95-year-old ever needed. She was defensive of family to a fault. She always crossed her legs and held her head high until tired bones and gravity finally won, but only barely. I did not understand most of this until I was reintroduced to her as a resident in our home. Though not the way I would have planned it, Geraldine's world provided the space for me to realize things I might not have ever done on my own. But most importantly, and I count this as her gift to me for helping to take care of her, it allowed Leslie and I to spend more time together and partner on an effort of supreme importance. Through most of the caretaking journey, it seemed rational to plan and sacrifice for whatever hardships were likely to come. But eventually, the predictability of it completely unraveled and produced something different, a type of unanticipated glitch that created a new awareness that could only be appreciated by looking at the entirety of the experience. To leverage past impactful experiences, I utilize an evolving context methodology. It is a permitting of new knowledge, competencies, and skill sets built at various points in our lives and careers to give new context and meaning to past experiences. Common to all podcasts to date is the relaying of stories many years removed within the context about how I think about business today. As this experience is very fresh, I will have to be attentive to the lessons to come. In the meantime, allow me to reframe this experience in terms of business mindsets. The word glitch is commonly defined as a sudden, usually temporary malfunction or irregularity in a system. But in my story, I offer a context for the term as fundamentally amoral in the sense that it is neither inherently good or bad. It is simply an unexpected system behavior that disrupts an expected pattern. Some expressions of this might look like a disruption in a feedback loop, something outside the norm that alters expected outcomes. A leverage point for change that signals an underlying pattern that may need attention. An emergent property that can be random but also indicative of deeper systemic behavior. For business leaders, the most compelling perspectives from this refined concept of a glitch would be those that tie directly to leadership, strategy, and adaptability. Here are 4 insights that can align with the challenges and thought processes of business executives. Number 1, strategic agility and a glitch as a shift in awareness. Executives often operate with rigid strategic plans and projected outcomes, assuming that success will unfold in a predictable, linear fashion. However, business environments are inherently volatile, and unexpected disruptions, market shifts, supply chain breakdowns, leadership turnover, are common. The best leaders recognize that these glitches are not just setbacks, but signals of a system adjusting in real time. Strategic agility comes from expanding awareness, not just reacting to change, but seeing new pathways in the disruption. My planned trajectory was a structured life with Leslie that included travels, quiet moments together, and a future that followed a more expected course. However, Geraldine's decline introduced a new system, one that required continuous recalibration. We had to pivot from our initial expectation of cruises and personal freedom to a new definition of purpose and fulfillment. The process of stopping waiting, of ceasing to see the situation as a delay, and instead embracing it as a reality to be shaped, was the ultimate act of strategic agility. Like in business, where leaders often find that a product launch or market strategy isn't going as expected, the key is not to force the original plan, but to shift with the emerging reality and find new opportunities within it. Number 2, leadership mindset and the blind spot of expectations. Many leaders assume that progress only counts if it follows a predefined trajectory. When setbacks occur, the instinct is often to double down on the original plan rather than step back and reassess assumptions. Just as my 7-year experience initially seemed like a delay, but was actually delivering key experiences in unexpected ways, business leaders must ask, what is actually happening that we are failing to recognize? For much of the caregiving experience, the mental framing was one of loss and postponement, a waiting period before life could continue as planned. But in reality, the things that I'd hoped to do were already happening, just in unexpected forms. Cooking became a passion instead of a chore. The desire for creative output turned into the development of a podcast. Time with Leslie, initially imagined as vacations and leisure, took shape in shared caregiving, planning, and quiet mornings over coffee. The glitch was a failure to recognize that the change had already occurred. Similarly, business leaders can often misinterpret disruption as failures instead of as unfolding alternative successes. A revenue plateau, an organizational shift, or a failed strategy doesn't necessarily indicate stagnation. It may mean that progress is happening in a way that it isn't immediately obvious. Number 3, systems thinking in leadership and the hidden order in disruption. Business systems do not operate in straight lines. They evolve based on internal and external forces, customer needs, regulatory changes, economic cycles. The most resilient organizations understand that disruption is often a sign of evolution rather than decay. Instead of focusing solely on maintaining stability, great leaders ask, what is emerging within this disruption that we can harness? My assumption was that caregiving would be an all-consuming disruption, preventing growth and personal fulfillment. But hidden within the experience was a completely new system forming, one that enabled personal transformation rather than stifling it. The challenge of daily meals turned into a culinary journey. The limitations of no longer traveling evolved into long walks, guitar playing, and reading books that otherwise would have remained neglected. The role of being a passive observer to caregiving morphed into a deeply involved partnership with Leslie. This mirrors what happens in organizations. A market downturn might reveal inefficiencies that need to be addressed. A company's struggle to innovate might be a sign that it needs to rethink how it listens to customers. A leadership crisis might expose a lack of succession planning that should have been tackled earlier. By recognizing that disruption is a recalibration rather than a failure, businesses, like individuals, can uncover hidden opportunities within the chaos. Number 4, resilient leadership and decision-making and glitch as a call to presence. The difference between reactive and initiative-taking leadership is awareness. Leaders who are constantly looking for the next milestone may fail to recognize that key changes are already happening now. The concept of being present with high awareness means recognizing when the system is adjusting itself in ways we didn't anticipate, but that may actually benefit us in the long run. For years, there was a constant state of looking ahead, waiting for a resolution, waiting for a change, waiting for a return to normal. But the most pivotal realization was that the act of waiting itself was the problem. Life was still moving, experiences were still unfolding, and meaningful personal and professional transformation was already underway. This aligns with the core challenge of leadership. When executives are always focused on the next expansion, the next big project, the next strategy, they may fail to leverage what is already working beneath the surface. For example, a company in flux may actually have a strong cultural foundations that need to be nurtured rather than reinvented. A team facing obstacles may already possess the skill sets needed to overcome them if leadership steps back and allows them to lead from within. A period of uncertainty may not mean failure, but the unfolding of a shift that will ultimately provide the resilience needed for future success. I believe glitches are a recalibration of what is possible. The most effective leaders do not just react to glitches. They learn to read them as signals of transformation. The 7-year caregiving experience was not a delay in life. It was life itself unfolding in ways that were unplanned but ultimately meaningful. leaders who learn to see glitches as recalibrations rather than failures can extract meaning, drive better decision making, and unlock potential that would otherwise remain hidden. Thank you for listening to my story. As I said early on, it's a little fresh, so I appreciate the ability to be able to share the story. It's a little raw at the moment. But at this point, what I'd like to do is bring in the interviewee, and that's going to be my very good friend, Rick Albertini. As I said early on, he's a CEO of Phoenix Enterprises, and we're going to let him share more about that. But we met many years ago, and as I said, I'm very, very fond of talking about the Liberty Boys and the group of guys that just love to play ball and love to talk stuff and important stuff and unimportant stuff. So, Rick, welcome. Thanks very much, and very, very nice to have you on. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for letting me be a part of this. I always enjoy catching up and looking forward to this.
One of the ways we get started is, probably recalling the story, I had made reference to a lyric by Sean Rowe, and it just sort of went along talking about, where you're going to find wisdom, and it's locked up from those that hurry ahead, which is pretty powerful. The last line in that lyric, which I didn't say, had to do with just leaving a legacy. It was just time to leave something behind. And one of the reasons that stuck with me is in many of the conversations we've had over the years, and I've seen you on your journey in terms of growing Phoenix Enterprises over the years and doing a wonderful job. You have also mentioned that you want to do more than just have a really well-run company that helps take care of people and that helps take care of you and your family, that you want to have something that's lasting. Legacy was my word. That might not be your word. But you want meaning that outlives you and the things that you're doing today. And I just have to say, I talk to a lot of business owners, and I think there are a lot of them, plenty of them, that think I'd like this thing to go forever, but very few articulate it, because once you articulate something, then you got to account for it. I'm going to let you tell me whether any of that resonates with you, and then we're just going to go from there. So again, welcome, and I'm looking forward to this interview.
The term we use internally and how we've framed it has been, we want to build a 100-year company, right? And that's if we talk about legacy or something like that, sometimes I think legacy is a little bit maybe selfish, I guess, is because it's seemingly only one person's legacy, and that's why the way we frame it is, say, a 100-year company. How do we do that? How do we accomplish that? And we're almost halfway there. We're at like 47 years now, so we're trying to work towards that and make decisions based as that is our point of reference, right? And saying, okay, how does this work for our 100-year company? Does it work today and potentially, for years from now?
At the 47 years, and that's a long ways. I know how old you are, so I imagine any work you did, this is probably a family company, right? I think this is a company that your father started, your mom and dad started, maybe?
Yep, absolutely. It was started in 1978, and and I was I was in high school at the time, and used to come in on Saturday nights or Saturday mornings, actually, so I could go out Saturday night and have a little bit of money in my pocket, to go out and do something. So Saturday mornings I'd go in and wire trucks and wash trucks and just do some pretty basic work on the floor, clean the toilets as well. That was always the fun part. And then through college I worked there and so on, and eventually my father and I worked together when I graduated from college, and that lasted about a year before, actually less than a year, before I came to him and I said, Dad, I love you, but you and me can't work together. So I'm going to go off and do something else. Yeah. And, I'm sure that's a story that's happened, plenty of times, but he then told me, he said, you know what? My dad was really good at working with his hands. He knew how to make stuff. He knew how to do stuff, but the business side wasn't his, forte. So he said, well, why don't you run this? And I'm going to go off. And he got his contractor's license, his HVAC license, and so on, and went off and did that, and had projects that he could just kind of do and actually do, as opposed to plan and try and grow a business. He just kind of wanted to do. And I took the company over at that point, and it was quite a journey.
It's interesting. I don't know how much of it's generational, cultural, I don't know, but my story is kind of similar. My dad, enormously hard worker, worked with his hands, would do print media back when it was actually kind of dangerous to run print machines and things. And his integrity was high, his quality was high, his mannerisms were high, but his business aptitude was poor. And I feel like even before I knew what business was, I kind of felt like that was the case. But, of course, I imagine you, like me, took from our relationships a really strong set of values. And so, it may be that I know more about business than my dad ever did, but all the values and hard work and work ethic I have, I think comes from his encouragement. I don't know if you might say the same thing.
I would, because he's that same guy who, get up early, show up to work, come home late because, hey, I got to finish this and so on, so the commitment and, and the, do what you say, do it right, don't take shortcuts, all those things, definitely came from him. But that ethics piece is that started there. But like you said, I guess the business aspect and how to actually, run a company and, understand costs and so on. That was not their forte.
Yeah, that's not such easy stuff anyway. I talk to a lot of businesses, and they have to wear a lot of hats, and some of the hats they discard aren't the ones they ought to be discarding.
Right.
I think my dad thought if you work hard and you do a really good job, you make money. So, but hey, listen, before we get even deeper into sort of how the journey went, can you just spend some time talking about Phoenix Enterprises and what you do, and then maybe you can educate me as to whether. I would imagine that in the business you're in, you would have peripherally been affected by the fires that were going on in Southern California last month. I don't know if that's a good assumption, but if you wouldn't mind sharing some of that.
So Phoenix Enterprises, is we in theory we have rebranded now. We're known as Phoenix Truck and Van, and we are basically what we believe is the biggest and most capable truck body and equipment operation, in Southern California, and that we provide work trucks for fleets, for the electric company, the gas company, the fire departments, U.S. Forest Service, and various cities and agencies, throughout California and the Southwest. So as we've grown, our reach and who we work with has grown as well. So relating that, to the fires that happened in the last month, a lot of our customers, utility companies in particular, have, some have been accused or blamed of, potentially, being the spark of one of the fires. And they've all been impacted because, as you saw, so many homes have been destroyed. That entails water companies, gas companies, electric companies, all types of service companies. So yeah, it's a lot of our customers have been impacted, and they're doing all they can to make sure that the trucks we provide to them are operational and in service and getting to where they got to be and providing services for all those people that are in need of them. So we've really been working hand in hand with them to make sure that they've got the trucks they need, and and priorities have shifted, and all of a sudden we say, hey, we need these in particular, to go and do this job or that job, and we've been working really closely with them to make sure that they've got the tools they need to get their jobs done.
So Rick, just a little bit about the business model or how the supply chain works. So are you purchasing a standard chassis with I don't even know what I'm talking about because I'm not a car guy, but is there some fundamental thing that you're purchasing and then you're re-outfitting it for whatever needs arise?
Yep, you claim modesty, but you're always a sharp guy, and yes, that is our our model. In that normally we're purchasing a cab chassis from one of the OEMs, whether it be Ford, Ram, Stellantis, Freightliner, and so on. So we buy the cab chassis, and then we do the rest of the upfit of that vehicle, whether it be underdeck air compressors, hydraulic systems, backhoes, in particular for the gas company. And then we also manufacture all the compartmentation and body that goes onto that cab chassis. So our goal is to basically buy the cab chassis and then manufacture and install all the components and the bodies that go on top, and deliver a turnkey unit that is literally already decaled and has their vehicle number on it and license plates and so on. And they literally get the keys and say, okay, let's go to work.
So what's a turnaround for just one of those? I know you're producing them in some kind of mass and some type of mechanistic way, but typically to turn one of those around, is that several weeks, several days?
We have really two different divisions in our company, and one is the side where we get the cab chassis, and we're doing really a lot of work to it, and putting different systems on, and that can take, let's say, from inception, once the cab chassis is on the ground, to completion can take anywhere from 3 up to 4 or 5, potentially even longer than that, months to complete it. We also have our light duty division where we take also potentially a cab chassis or a pickup truck or a van and really do some upfitting of that, maybe a van interior, maybe some accessories onto the pickup truck and so on, and do all of the all of the decals and wiring for their radio and communication equipment and safety lighting and so on. And that is literally out in a matter of days. It really depends on what that particular project is, but on the light duty side, we'll do a couple thousand vehicles a year, and on the manufacturing side, depending on the mix, we'll do 4 or 5, 600 vehicles a year. So it really is kind of a wide range, and we operate them really while they're all under the same umbrella, somewhat as separate divisions.
Yeah, so I'm going to kind of steer us back in a second to the sort of evolution of, from when you took things over from your dad, or wherever you want to choose to begin, because I'd just like to hear a little bit about the different experiences you had and what you had to evolve to get certain results. But one last question about the operations. I imagine most people come to you and say, listen, we got to have, this truck has to do the following 5 things, and then you can make that happen. Does anyone ever come to you and say, look, here's a problem we're trying to solve. We're not sure exactly what we need. Like, do you do any design? Is there any innovation that you guys offer in terms of building out things that someone might use that they didn't anticipate they could even need?
That is something that we work a lot on, and that we work with a lot of different customers with. And again, having seen a lot of different operations from different companies and different ways of them doing their work, a customer comes in and asks that question, and we say, well, we can talk to you about, some things we've done for someone else over here, or this and that. So we do a lot of design work. What we come to this is when we sit down with a customer, honestly, we don't necessarily say we're going to try and sell them this. We sit there and ask that very question. All right, what challenges do you have? We are merely a solutions provider. How do we solve whatever glitch, whatever problem you're having, and how can we help you solve that? And we think we can bring some good ideas to the table and help accomplish that. So really that methodology has worked really well for us, and that's evolved over the years. But that's absolutely the way we approach it, and not saying, here, we're offering you this. We go the other way and say, hey, let's talk about, what your needs are and how can we help you? Because we think we have a lot of different solutions and a lot of different innovative ways to help you improve your operations.
I have some general sense of your growth over the years, and so I imagine that you've been able to spark a lot of that growth just through the expansion of your ability to do exactly what you were just describing, right? Design and get solutions to your customers.
Oh, for sure. But I'm going to change this a little bit, because one of the things that you were talking about in your in the story that you were telling earlier, mm-hmm. about a glitch is really indicative and applicable to what we had experienced, in that our light duty division, that we call it, that we have internally now, that, does a higher number of vehicles a year because they're just simpler and less complicated and less equipment on them. But we do a couple thousand vehicles a year out of in that division now. That actually started because we had one of our customers come to us and said, "Hey, we love what you guys do for us. You build this complicated stuff. You build this. It's integrated. It's this, that, terrific. But we have a problem, and our problem is that we also buy a few hundred pickup trucks a year, pickup trucks, vans, maybe even some sedans that we need to put decals and radios in, and some simple stuff. We need you guys to do this because that market is fragmented in really small operations, and we can't get the output we need, and we have to go to various places to get this work done and so on. We want you guys to take this over." And this fleet manager, this female fleet manager, which is kind of unusual in that segment of, let's say 15, 20 years ago, told us that's what she wanted us to do for her. And we said, okay, well, we'll go back and talk about it and this and that. And we went back and talked about it. And, in our bravado, macho way, we said, come on, we're manufacturers. We build stuff. We're not going to bolt some stuff on and just do this light duty stuff. And that's for little shops and this and that. It's not us. We're not going to do it. So we went back and told her, hey, we appreciate it, but, thanks, but no thanks. She said, okay, well, I think you're wrong, but, maybe give it some more thought. So about a week later, we go and we come back, and she, my partner, whom Todd Davis, he's walking down the hall, and she sees him and says, hey, come in here. And she says, hey, what's going on? And so she says, sit down and have a seat just for a minute. So he sits down. She stands up, opens up her drawer, reaches in and pulls out this stack of papers, right? And slams them on her desk and says, here's a stack of POs for what I need you to do on my light duty side. Go figure it out. And basically hands them over a bunch of POs and says, you're now in this business. And he came back to the office and said, that she's serious. She wants us to do this and so on, so on. And we're like, what the hell? How are we going to do this? So we start to figure it out, right? And we go, okay, well, we can do this. We'll separate this team over here. We'll start doing this. We'll figure it out and this and that. And that's how we got started in that business. That is now a third of our business. Yeah. Okay. And we do thousands of those trucks a year. And we use it as an entry point with a lot of customers because we say, hey, we can take you from your sedans and your light duty stuff all the way up to this other more sophisticated stuff that we build for you and so on. So we can take you soup to nuts, whatever you need in your fleet and this and that. But again, that was something that was a glitch. We didn't want to do it. We didn't think we were going to do it. And now it's a huge part of our business.
Yeah. And you can look back on the years and say it's a huge part of your business. Like you may have been resenting it for a year or two or so because you had to do it.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yes. Are you kidding? I was like, this is not worth it. What are we doing?
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Yep. So listen, this is not nearly as a very, very tenuous relation here. But when you think about even some of the things that I'll do, I want sort of bigger companies to call on me, and I would rather talk about leadership and designing complex strategies and stuff. But a lot of people, the first thing they want to talk about is how do I read my income statement? And so,
right. Yep.
So I finally figured out, well, if I help them read the income statement and then I say something clever in the middle of it, someone says, "Oh, you know how to do that too? You know how to read? You know how to do strategies?"
Yep.
So my accounting is like your truck body. Now you're probably making a lot higher margin on those truck bodies than I was making on my little accounting consultations. But the point is the point, right? Thanks for transitioning that because I did want to get back to that. That is something that I presume would have come out of a question that I was going to ask you before that because I imagine that since you took over the business, that it wasn't necessarily all perfect, right? I mean, I know you were smarter than your dad, just like I was. But did you have any rough times coming out of that transition?
When I got the nod that okay, you're here, you take this over and you run it and this that, I remember looking around and going, okay. Of course, it was after a situation where the economy had turned bad. We had lost our largest customer. We again for various reasons, and so on. And I'm looking around and this is going, now what am I going to do? And I think there was 6 guys, right? 6 or 7 maybe. And I brought them all, into a circle and said, all right, guys, here's what's going on. We're going to go on a new path. We're going to try and figure this out. I'm in charge, and we're going to do our damnedest. And I will tell you, I'll do my best and work hard and be fair and straight with you guys. And I like to say that 2 of those guys wound up working with me for 30 plus years. 2 of those 6, so yeah, we've been through a lot together. Now we're over a couple hundred people today, and it's worked out in the long run. But there's plenty of glitches in the journey from there to here.
So when you leverage the truck bodies story into some work, and now it's a 30-year business, so that was a net positive looking back. And I think part of what I was relaying in the story is sometimes things, when you're in the middle of something, it doesn't seem very, very palatable for what you're trying to do. But when you back up, there's a Zen Buddhist guy that says that, having stepped back, I can see more of the horizon. And now, the danger there is you can step so far back that you can't see anything. And I've been accused of and have actually done that myself. So it's a matter of trying to find the right thing. But I think it's the fundamental gravitation to the idea that, look, everything can't happen in short bites. I think fundamentally, if something is sustainable, it didn't become sustainable overnight. It became sustainable because it had to be sustainable for a long time. And if you can sort of indoctrinate that into the business and the mindset, then people don't feel high anxiety over trying different things because they know our company is strong enough to absorb this if it's not perfect, And I'm just wondering if you've, besides the truck body stuff, like that was a success story in looking back. Is there anything that maybe didn't turn out the way you like that you're willing to admit or talk about that you had to abandon that you also maybe learned something from?
Oh, okay. So, and this was, quasi personal and really more for, it was for a long time, a somewhat a sense of, ego on my part. Right. Some years ago, talking with a customer, we had, he said, hey, I'd like you to make this thing for me. And I've got some ideas, and we started designing together and going back and forth and this, that, and the other. And we developed this body, if you will, this utility body, this self-contained unit that would slide into a pickup truck, into an existing pickup bed. And it had all the compartmentations and a big slide out drawer. And you could put different accessories on, like, ladder racks and roller tops and all this other stuff in it. Right. I actually got a patent, and applied for the patent and got it. And then we called it the Load and Go product line. And we made it for a number of years. Right. And we're going but it never could quite scale to something, big enough and worthwhile enough to really be sustainable and be able to invest in it and improve and this, that. It was always just kind of like there, and it did okay, and it kind of went up a little bit, went down a little bit. Some customers really loved it, and others tried it and said, oh, there's a place, and then but then it kind of flittered off. And said, ultimately, about, I want to say, I don't know, maybe it was 3, maybe 4 years now, I don't remember exactly, we had to come to the decision to kill the line. We said, we're no longer going to make that line. We're no longer going to do that. And my ego, had to get over it as well and say, hey, this was my baby. This was, this signature thing that, hey, I designed it. We got a patent. We did this. We did that. All this cool stuff. And ultimately it was like, yeah, it's just not good enough. It's not going to grow to be substantial enough and have a good enough footprint in the market, and so on and so on. So we had to make the decision to kill it. And so that was, that had a business element to it, but also a personal, ego element to it.
Yeah, there's I've utilized a methodology that sort of covers 3 or 4 dynamics, but one particular one is what I refer to as opportunity management. And when I say that, a lot of times some of the people I'm talking to are thinking, well, listen, we can sell this or we can sell that, and we can charge more here. And I'm saying, well, listen, those are opportunities, and I'm sure you're going to evaluate them. But there's two things. There's maybe two other facets of opportunity. One is opportunity comes in the form of either revenue opportunities and also investment opportunities and also cost. Are you going to spend something or not? Are you going to make a capital investment or not? And so that's one facet. And the other facet is sometimes you say no, or sometimes you say, we tried it and now it's no. And that's a hard place to get to because we're also emotionally invested in what comes out of our head. And I think I've found that that's a difficult thing, even for me. I can think of things, think of two things right now that I do not want to let go. And one of them's personal and one of them's business. And I just know that 2 months ago I should have done something different, and I still haven't done it. And I don't know why. I do know why. I'm a human being, I guess. But so I'm going to keep working on that. Let me go back to, by whatever metric, you don't want to give away the company secrets, but let's just say, let me ask the question this way. From the time you took over or shortly thereafter to where the business is now, how would you characterize the growth in terms of percentages, or what metric, what would help me understand and the audience understand how you've been able to kind of scale from the time you took the business over?
One of the things that I liked about the premise that when we spoke about doing this episode was the 7-year glitch piece, and as I thought about that premise a little bit, the thing that came up a lot in my thought process was that 7 years is almost kind of like the cycle of different elements of my life anyway, and I think it relates to others, that if I think back on these 7-year cycles, I think we more or less played at Liberty Park, I want to say, for about 7 years. If I look at, as I look at my kids, there's these, to me, very distinct elements that happen between, let's say, 1 to 7, and then, that 8 to 14, and then that 15 to 21, and then that, 21 and beyond, right? So I think about that. I'm in a 7-year cycle in that I bought everybody out in the company, and because we were fractured and had competing interests and so on, in the within the ownership, the family ownership, it was particularly or predominantly myself and my brother. I bought everybody out about 4.5, almost 5 years ago. So we're 5 years into the cycle, and I will tell you from when we bought it to now, we've doubled, in our revenue, compared to where we were, and I think that's mainly because of a more of a focused approach and unified approach within our team, to say this is the direction we're going. This is this is our goal, and this is where we want to head towards, and so if I look back, I guess, for me, 35 years. So let's say, give or take five 7-year cycles. I don't recognize the company we started as, versus what we are today. But I mean, it was a big deal. The 1 year my dad said, "Oh, we sold $1 million of product. We're $1 million a year company." Mm-hmm. Okay. And I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. That's a neat deal. I can say that, we're well over 100 times that now today. So I'm like, okay, that's kind of where, what our journey's been. It's been a heck of a ride.
So let me ask you, so I know on the one hand, you can say, look, we want to be a 100-year company and maybe even want to be a 100-year company starting today, right? But in any case, sure. You want to be in business 20 years from now, and you might be retired by then, and someone else is going to be handling it for you. But in that journey, is this company, is it marginally bigger because you're optimized, and that's the kind of where it's going to top out, or is it a kind of thing where you're going to keep scaling until something stops you?
You know what? Our goal is to continue to keep scaling. I mean, we actually just closed on a new building last year. We're now occupying it, and we had to redo a little bit of rearranging of things in it, but we're now in it and operating. Not quite to as well as we'd like yet, because we still have some organization to do, but that building was effectively as big as our existing two buildings are. So we said, okay, we're going to increase our scale, we're going to increase our our footprint, our capabilities, our capacity, and and I will tell you that I'm always out looking for something else, and how can we improve what we're doing, and what our capabilities are, and what we can do. And so we are certainly not staying at where we were or where we are. We're looking to continue to expand.
And do you think that happens both organically and maybe through some expansion or acquisition or anything like that?
Um, Thus far, everything we've done has been, via organic growth, via, seeing some opportunities, and trying to expand our capabilities. I think if we did something on the acquisition side, the thing that we've talked about is if we do something like that, it'd probably be to do an acquisition, but that allows us to go into a different marketplace, a different region. And that, and that's definitely something that we've got our eye out on, and see how we, what opportunities present themselves.
All right. Well, so Rick, I'm going to do a little bit of a pivot here in a second. We're going to wrap up here shortly in a few minutes. But before I do that, just maybe one more question about your vision. So what do you think dominates, in whatever way you can communicate it, will dominate the next 7-year glitch, if that's what we want to call it? What will it be characterized by, do you think?
I think the big change will be that transition, as you mentioned, said, hey, do I hope we're potentially around still in 20 years? Yes, is the answer. And fortunately for me, we've got a team of people that are that next generation already in place, in our ranks. Our general manager, he's in his early 40s. Our production manager, he's in his early 40s. We have salespeople in their in their late 30s, and such, and growing, and and I'm well past those ages, so I won't be part of that. I think that transition is going to be where let's say I was a general manager years ago, and then I'm going to say I'm currently president, but I think my next role will be more, CEO, even more strategic and less operational, and that role, is where our GM will grow into, and that's what that next 7-year cycle or 7-year glitch will look like.
Yeah. Oh, great. All right, let me do a small pivot here. Rick, it's just no secret. I mean, it's almost embarrassing how much I gushed over that time being part of that sort of Liberty Park cohort. I've at least 4 of the 10 or 11 podcasts I've done, I've made some mention of it. But besides just really enjoying it, the reason I enjoyed it is because took a lot of lessons from it. And, there's at least 3 of them I can point to. One had to do with
Is one of them not going to your left? You can't go left. Sorry. I didn't mean to bring that up.
Yeah. Let's not go there for the moment. I wish some of our other friends were on here, because I know you're better than me, but I was better than 1 or 2 guys. And we can try that. No, but I've used that example I remember coaching a kids basketball team, and I remember thinking the way I coached had to do with the way I was sort of when I was hanging out with a group and playing ball. So it was an organizational development type of story. Then I would talk about strategic decisions that one coach made versus the decisions that I made, and and that became the story about what's the utilization of your assets and your energy. How you're expending your energy, and how are things going to look based on the decisions you make. And then other stories had to do with organizational development and the roles that different people play. It wasn't necessarily about stratifying, who was better or who was not. It was that everybody was important, and everybody was encouraged, and everybody was dogged, and everybody was everything, because there was a high level of trust. And so there's at least 2 more things that I would have said, this is what I learned from that wonderful experience. And then it helped that I was with a lot of good men, and they were also not only friends, but also cousins and brothers and all those good things. So I'll put you on the spot here. You may not have had any lessons learned from that, other than how to dominate people who were shorter than you. Did you take anything from that experience that you actually think about that hits you when you're thinking about business? Can you relate any of it?
The big piece for me is it's surprising how that thread stays relevant. So on weekends now, usually on Sunday afternoons, if all goes right, there's a group of us that play pickleball together, and another Liberty Park guy is part of that cohort with me, Paul James,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Two weeks ago for Super Bowl Sunday, I had Ruben Davila, Paul James, and Todd Davis, and Mark Wilson, all Liberty Park guys at one point or another, here at the house. Okay, so we keep that cohesion, and I think really looking at something and saying, okay, people that do their best, people that matter, people that show up and know how to know how to do the hard stuff, and then can enjoy the good stuff, are important. So in business, what I've gone with is saying, okay, how do I keep these good people to continue to be part of our organization? And I'm proud to say that we have so many people that once they come into the company, they stay with the company. They say, oh, this is a good place to be. This is a good, they pay me well. We have good, working conditions. I like what I do. This is a good organization, and so on. We have some employees that are literally, 20, 25, 30 plus years with us. Right. And then, as we continue to grow and get people on board, now we've got a growing number of people that have been with us, 6, 5, 8 years, and so on. And that's the lesson I took from there, that recognizing good people and then trying to figure out how to keep them in your org and not lose them, and help them to grow and help them to get better, and and see their skills evolving. Maybe not being able to go to the left ever, but hey, you know what? You can you see that they do have that head fake, and then then they get their shot off because they continue to evolve and learn new skills.
Or they play defense to make up for a lack of offense.
Also true. But how do you do that? That's the lesson I took from there, that hey, you know what? If you make it a good environment, and that people will show up, and what you got to do is not make it where they like, oh, I don't want to be part of this anymore. It was the highlight of so many of our of our weeks to get up there early Saturday morning and come together. Well, we're trying to now translate that and say, how do we make that so that we make it the highlight, and it's not the Monday morning dread, but it's like, hey, you know what? I'm going to a good place. I like being part of this org, and how do I make that environment be true, for hopefully all, but if not all, most of the people that are part of Phoenix.
I will mention that I'm sure you have some excuse, like you live in LA, I'm in Atlanta, but honestly, I just did not get the invitation for the Super Bowl party that you had. It's somewhere. Leslie probably kept it from me. I don't know.
She probably did. The last thing she wanted would to let you come over here with PJ, Ruben, Mark, Todd, myself. That's the last thing she'd want that to happen.
Nobody wants that. Well, listen, let's go ahead and wrap up, Rick. But let me ask you one thing. Is there anything else that maybe you just want to communicate that maybe is important to say, or if not, if you want to just go to maybe just saying how might people reach out to you? I mean, you got a hell of a business out there. Maybe someone might want to call you and offer you $500 million for your business. I don't need any of that, but you might. Is there anything that you'd like to kind of close with from your perspective?
I don't even know where to go with what you threw out there, because that's so fanciful, and it's a crazy world. No, I all I want to say is, again, I enjoyed this process, but two, I've truly enjoyed the journey and the ride that I've been able to take, the people I've been able to work with, the friends I've made, the things I've been able to learn and seek out and find out about, and I'm truly blessed. I look at this, and it's enabled me to have opportunities with my friends, but also with the fact that it's provided for my family, and the opportunities that I've been able to to provide for our family, for with the kids, the educations that they can have, and where they the opportunities that they can look at in their lives going forward. I am truly blessed.
Well, Rick, man, listen, it's been a pleasure as always. I enjoy interacting with everyone from back there, and I really appreciate you participating, and look forward to kind of connecting when I can get out there pretty soon, okay?
I look forward to it, Jess.
Hang in there for a little bit, and let's go ahead and wrap things up. So, allow me to share the Acuity value proposition. We demystify the challenge of translating talent and resources into exceptional and sustainable organizational performance by surfacing actionable clarity and providing execution expertise in the areas of strategic design, financial management, operational excellence, and leadership development so that leadership can confidently navigate their organizations towards next level performance. If you would like to reach out to me, you can do so at area code 678-644-9311 or at jess@acuitybusiness.consulting. Thank you so much for joining us on the Leaders Commute podcast, which was produced by Business RadioX and brought to you from the Subaru of Gwinnett studio inside the Gas South Convention Center in Duluth, Georgia. I would like to thank our producer, Mike Salmon, for his work on this podcast and the magnificent work he's doing to promote business in Gwinnett County. You can catch a new episode every month here on Business Radio X, or you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you enjoy your podcasts. Until next time, I am Jess Villegas, and you've been listening to The Leaders Commute on Business Radio X.